welcome to the GA for Justice with your host, the one and only community activist, Miss Georgia Allen. And I'm just going to bring her right on today. You already, the picture sometimes don't do it justice, so I ain't going to even put it up there. GA.
All right.
Miss
Well,
Georgia Allen.
hello,
Hi.
family and friends. It is good to be back.
Yes.
It has been a busy time here in Hampton Roads in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Again, I am Georgia F. Allen with GA for Justice, and we bring you greetings to our family, our friends, our listening audience every Thursday at 12 noon. As always, we want to thank Mr. Henderson Vaughn, our engineer, our host, the person that makes this dream come true. He is the dream maker. He is Captain 85, and he continues to open up the airwaves so that the community can have a voice, so that we are able to share with you. I always try to bring to you a conversation for information, a conversation for correction, as well as a conversation for transformation. And we've had an election, we've had Supreme Court rulings, all types of things have been going on. Juneteenth festivals and commemorative events have been going on. But today we have a very, very special guest. And why is he so special? Because he's got knowledge that I don't have. So I love it when I bring on guests who have a tremendous amount of knowledge as it pertains to community, as it pertains to elections, as it pertains to surveys and data collection, etc. And we definitely need to hear from him today. So our special guest today is Mr. Frederick C. FOARD. He has an MBA, is a retired business consultant, and specializing in healthcare, which our community needs, marketing, communications, business strategy, and business development. He and his wife, Georgia Ann, are residents of the College Park section of Virginia Beach, having relocated from southern New Jersey at the end of 2013. His last full-time employment was as an operational head of a licensed assisted living facility in Norfolk. Prior to that, he was a senior vice president for strategic planning for a major consulting company, serving the pharmaceutical industry. And before that, he rose through the ranks to become the cardiovascular marketing vice president at the previous company or predecessor company of the pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline. And that's a big mouthful to say. In addition to this, he has 40 plus years in business management. Fred has twice owned and operated consulting firms specializing in multicultural healthcare marketing, medical publishing, consumer and professional healthcare education, and professional healthcare strategic initiatives. Besides his work experience, Fred has a lifelong community service background, including voter registration and education, which we love, restoration of voting rights for ex-convicts, youth mentoring, advocacy for action against health disparities, disease prevention and management education, political awareness education. He is a dedicated member and elder in his church and an active member of 2 Black fraternal organizations. Fred's involvement with Virginia Beach political issues has been through his involvement with local, state, and national candidate assessment and recommendations conducted annually by the Virginia Beach African American Political Action Council, or as we call it, VBAPAC. Fred holds a bachelor's degree from Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. Hey, my niece just got accepted to that college, an HBCU, and a master's degree in business and finance from Capital University, located in Columbus, Ohio. He holds life membership in the National Black MBA Association, the NAACP, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Inc., and is a non-clinical life member of the Association of Black Cardiologists Incorporated. We are thrilled to have Mr. Frederick C. Ford here with us today. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
All right, and you, excited to have you up here today. Lots been going on.
Yep.
All right. So, we have been talking about elections. We've been talking about the city doing their surveys and looking at their voting system and how it is and is not working. We've had lawsuits. We've had the Supreme Court make decisions. And now we have you here with us to kind of talk a little bit about the recent election that we had in Virginia Beach. We recently had an election, a primary election, where we were trying to determine who we were going to have on our ballot in November. And I believe you had candidates in your area to vote for. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Askew.
All right. Okay. And Mr. Askew did win that election.
Mm-hmm.
And we're
also,
go
we
ahead.
had Lucas and Spruill.
Huh?
Lucas and Spruill.
Right. And that was the Senate candidates, and they are just outside of our city, but that is a high profile election. Do you want to share with the audience a little bit about the importance of an election between two strong senatorial candidates, both from our community, and what the importance of the candidate that did receive the most votes?
You're talking about the senatorial one?
The senatorial, yes.
Okay. So after there was a redistricting, it put Senator Spruill and Senator Lucas in the same district. And actually, Lucas claimed that was on purpose because it meant that whoever lost, we were down one black senator.
Correct.
But both, waged quite a campaign, quite a bit of mudslinging. I was sorry to see, rather than focus more on their own merits. As I understand it, and you may have to correct me on this, Georgia, Lucas had some seniority in senatorial committee assignments that if she would have lost, we would have lost that influence because Spruill would not have been able to move into that slot, at least not for now.
Absolutely.
So her winning means that she retains that level of power in the Senate. And I console myself with that. I say that because Spruill is a fraternity brother of mine, and I know him, and I was rooting for him. But the trade-off is that we do retain the influence that Lucas has.
Absolutely. And that is the situation a lot of times when we have these elections where two candidates compete in primaries. And in this particular case, Senator Louise Lucas is the pro temp of the Senate, which means she's third in line, similar to the Speaker of the House when it comes to the president, the vice president, and then the speaker. Senator Lucas is in a similar situation. There's the governor, the lieutenant governor, and there's the pro temp of the Senate. And so if she had not won that position, then the impact on her influence would have been substantial, because chances are she will probably be head of appropriations. Chances are she will probably now be head of finance because her tenure. And this is something that our young people want to think about when they're talking about running for office, because most positions, when it comes to elected bodies, except on the local level, but on your state and your national level, it goes by seniority. And when you're looking at moving people around, you want to be careful the positions that you run for, because that can definitely impact the leverage that you have. So we also had a couple of elections in Virginia Beach, one that turned out not so well because there were three Black Americans running for the same seat. And then a person from another demographic put their name in the hat toward the end of the last day to be able to declare. And so because the three Black candidates split their votes, they all lost out. So no one won. And that should be a lesson to the community that we can draw all the districts we want, but if you can't negotiate who is going to run for that position before you put a whole group of people in the process as candidates, you have a very likelihood that you will not receive anything at all. And so that is pretty much what happened in I want to say the 96 or 95th. There's so many new district names until I'm still struggling to try to figure them all out. But I'm sure you probably have a few comments with regards to that. We're just kind of getting the people who are from Virginia Beach up to date. Now, those of you who don't live in the state of Virginia or the Commonwealth of Virginia, this may not mean a lot. But when you're looking in your area and you're trying to be able to get a seat, you may want to learn something from Virginia Beach, not to crowd the field with all of your candidates from the same community, because if you do that, you risk losing, because you're going to have those votes split all over your community, but not enough for your community candidate to win.
The other lesson here too, Georgia, is that when a state is going through redistricting, and if you're not, usually there's some sort of opportunity for the public to provide some input. And in my opinion, rarely does the public get involved in discussions about the redistricting proposals. And I think it's important that we do. Otherwise, people are able to do what they want without regard to the effect it has, and oftentimes intentionally, they're trying to squeeze out minority votes by redistricting. And I think that's part of what happened in this situation, where we ended up having Sproul and Lucas in the same district.
Absolutely. And in this particular case, they did have a special master to draw their districts, because the state legislature could not come to an agreement. So because they weren't able to come to an agreement with regards to the district lines, ultimately they had to bring in the private consultant who supposedly drew districts in a manner that made sure that we had, representation throughout the state, but it also forced several people, even on both sides of the party, to have primaries. And so I think both sides were affected. We saw a lot of people retire. We saw people move from one district to another because if they had tried to stay in the district that they were in because of the way it was redrawn, it was going to be very difficult for them. And we saw that in both political parties. Neither one of those parties were saved. After reviewing the election this time and looking at how many people retired, a number of people on both sides decided that they would not run for office. It's a little more challenging when I can't see your face.
Sorry about that.
It's a little more challenging. I was hoping that you're
I'm
every now and
gonna,
then we pull your photo down to see if you're actually on the screen, and so far
right.
you have not been on the screen yet. But we are talking today about your vote, your values, and your voice, and we're speaking to that because it is critically important that we stay actively involved in the voting process, even between processes. I tell people all the time, you know, as my community and persons who are in different groups and organizations, that we should be sourcing for potential candidates all year long. We shouldn't just wait until it's election time and then decide, oh, well, let's see if we can find somebody to run for this position. No, source for candidates all year long. How do you feel about that, Fred, as someone who's part of the Virginia Beach APAC?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought much about recruiting people to run for office. I know there are a number of organizations that do that on both sides of the question, right wing and left wing, so to speak. But I've never thought much about it. You know, if somebody tells me they're interested, I will give them feedback as to whether I think they should or shouldn't. But other than that, yeah, I mean, we should be mindful of anybody who raises their hand and says, "I'm thinking about it," and the earlier they do that, the more time it gives us to evaluate their candidacy. But more important than that, I think, is that traditionally, we as Black folk don't put our money where our mouth is. And somebody told me a long time ago, elected officials listen to the money. If you don't put money into their campaign, they don't pay a lot of attention to you, especially when they're running for re-election and they're trying to raise money against a strong opponent. So it sounds like you're buying elections, but elections cost money, and candidates have to raise money, and the people who and it's not enough for them to hear from you that I support your campaign verbally. They want to know that you reached into your pocket and are supporting them with your dollars as well, and we don't do that very well, and oftentimes we lose not because we don't have the best candidate, but because we didn't put it any or enough money behind it versus what the other side is doing.
And that is true in many, many instances. You're absolutely right. The reason why I was suggesting that we start looking early for candidates is not that we're going to select someone to run for delegate or we're going to select someone to run for city council. Having a number of potential candidates will allow us time to groom and to study the candidate and allow the candidate time to look at issues and if we have a large base of potential candidates, as we're interviewing them, we can say, based upon what you do well, you may be better off running for school board than running for House of Delegate. And I think that what we've run into is that we've had people to sort of select that this is what I want to do. And that might not be the best place for them at this time. And that's one of the reasons why I'm hoping that our different groups and organizations will all be out here looking for potential candidates, because once you have a large swath out there, it allows you a little bit more of an opportunity to decide if you want someone to run for sheriff versus when they have a strong background in public safety, when they have all the credentials, and they said, well, really, I want to be the state senator. Well, the state senator might not be the best place for you. That sheriff position might be a little better place for you. So that's why I was saying that, and we might want to begin to have a base of persons here that we're able to look at, that they're able to get more involved in the community, and then make it a lot easier to present them to the public, because you now have a resume per se on them. What do you think?
I agree with that. As you know, Georgia, I've always been involved in youth mentoring, and in the group I'm involved with in Virginia Beach called the Golden Pole. We call the youth young leaders because
Right.
we are training them up to be leaders in their community. And I think that's where we have to put a lot of emphasis, is getting them young and getting them committed to community service.
Absolutely.
And if they start with that, and that leads them into community activism, like ASCU, for example, that may lead to elected office. But whether or not it does, it's important that we have as many young people and old, but particularly young people, because they're going to be around.
We hope.
Involved in. Well, that's the point. If they are involved in community service, they're more likely to be around, because they're not going to be involved in activities that are going to get them jailed or killed.
Right.
We have to develop a base of young leaders to take over for the different community service spots, including elected office, when ultimately they get vacated. I think of Bobby Scott, for example. He's I think 30 some years in his elected office.
Yes.
At some point
Right.
he's going to vacate that seat.
Absolutely.
And hopefully he's grooming or somebody's helping to groom somebody to take over his spot.
And not just one somebody, but grooming a couple of people, because
yes
because we definitely, you might be grooming someone, and then all of a sudden something happens and they decide that, you know what, I've decided to take a position in foreign service. So now you only have this one person. This person decided they want to go into foreign service or become a part of a diplomatic team. They may not be the diplomat, but that diplomat has to have a team of people surrounding them. And so they because they've been around the congressperson so long, they've had an excellent opportunity to meet other people. And someone drops this super offer, they decide, you know what, I've always wanted to live overseas, and here's the opportunity. So now you're going back to square one in developing and getting someone ready. So I hope that he has several people that could possibly replace him when
Right.
he's ready to step away. I agree with you 1000%.
You mentioned the three black candidates in Virginia Beach who sort of nixed each other out because they split the vote.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a negative. But on the other hand, the positive is that under our new, well, they were running for state office,
Right.
that's true.
Right.
And but for city positions, city council, board of education, that may happen more often going forward than not, because as you know, we have a um, new process for electing people
Mm-hmm.
called the 10-1 system, which means that you vote for only the candidate in your respective district. And one of the benefits is that it allows people who could not otherwise run for office on a citywide basis under the old system, because it would take a lot more money and a lot more time and energy um, to run on a citywide basis. But now they're only running within their district, and so we're going to have more candidates, as we did in the 2022 elections, and that's going to be good. But it does run the risk of several good candidates running against each other and knocking each other out.
And that is the other reason why I strongly feel that um, if we begin to develop our own candidates, we can work with them and say, okay, you're ready now to run. You probably should wait a while to run, or maybe you should run for another type of position. That's why I like the idea of having a large swath of people, because then hopefully you can help to mitigate that somewhat, not 1000%, but you know, position us where we're saying to our candidates that we can, why don't you be the one that run right now? Because I was looking at the three people that were in the race. One had a strong background in public service, very strong background in public service, in public safety. The other one, I want to say, had a background in, some community stuff, did some work on the state level. And then the other candidate had quite a bit of community work, had been actively involved, had served as a legislative aide on the state level, had worked with a number of persons in the state legislature. And so I was looking at the candidates and the opportunity that we had in our city, and I was like, okay, why don't we look at running one candidate, and those other two candidates have that conversation with them as to, what are their aspirations? Are their aspirations to get into the state legislature and work their way up, or is it an aspiration to get into the state legislature, make a few friends, and then look at consultant opportunities and things of that nature? So knowing what their, goal is would help the community identify the candidate that should stay in the race and the candidates that we probably want to say, why don't you wait and run at another time, not now? What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And I think the main idea you're putting forth is that We want to make sure that we don't step on each other's toes, vying for the same thing. We need to have some sort of strategic plan that as to who we want to support for what and when, and line up other people for other slots or at another time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What we say, your voice, your values, and your vote. And so we need to have a value system that helps us to identify what is going to be our best strategic plan to get us to reach those the opportunities and the goals and objectives that we really truly want. Because if we don't, we, as you shared earlier with the 10-1 system, folks who've been sitting on the sideline, all of a sudden they say, "Oh my gosh, I got a chance to run for office." They never participated in the lawsuit. They never helped one person in the whole entire city with the campaign. They never served in the NAACP. They never served on Virginia Beach APAC. They have never served on any of the groups that you mentioned, like the Golden Fold. And this is our males and our females. Golden Fold is primarily for the Omega fraternity, but likewise, the various female fraternities, they have a number of things that they serve on and a number of work that they're doing. But you find that someone will come out of the woodwork and throw their name in the hat, which could create chaos. And so I think that we have an opportunity by getting involved early and not waiting for that election of 2024 to begin to make sure that our voice is heard, make sure that the values that we care about are being implemented and sustained, and and just make sure that we are covering those things ahead of time so that we're not blindsided by someone who throws their name in the hat at the last second.
Yeah. So I know you keep looking to see me and you can't see me.
I can't see you.
Sorry about that. I'm going to get this camera fixed on this computer. But we mentioned the new Virginia Beach districting and election system, and as you know, back in March and April, the city undertook using an outside research group to get public assessment of how people felt about the new election system, the 10-1 system versus the old 7-1-1, and whether they wanted to stay with it or modify it or go to something completely different. As you know, because you were part of the federal suit against the old system, that one of the benefits of the new system is that it provides a better opportunity for underrepresented groups, minority groups, to be heard and for their candidates to be elected. And we started to see the fruits of that with the past election. We got more blacks elected than we'd had in the past, and that was a positive thing. And they just released the results of the survey I think it was 2 days ago, the city council heard the report, and it the conclusions were that people overwhelmingly wanted to stay with the new system. And the new system was also consistent with the benefits that social research on different kinds of election systems, single member system where one vote within your area counts as opposed to votes across citywide. That was a better way of going, and also both state and federal law is on the side of the new system. So apparently, if they go with the research, and I don't see how they cannot, uh, at least for the next round of Virginia Beach elections, we'll stay with the new system. But I get the feeling they want to try to modify it somehow. And one of the things they discussed is going to a rank order system. This is where you will have multiple candidates running for an office, and if nobody gets more than 50% of the ballots, wins more than 50%, then they kind of have a runoff in a way, where they actually ask you on the ballot to vote your first choice and your second choice and maybe your third choice. And if on the first go around nobody gets more than 50%, then they go to the second choice, and then even the third choice. It's kind of complicated, but it's being used in some parts of the country, and there's some feeling that that will negate what we're trying to do with the current election system. So they asked people were they interested, and most people said not, but then that's because most of them didn't understand the rank order system. The other thing that came out of this is that the number of people who actually gave their opinion, either in person at I think they had 10 city meetings, or they could go on the internet and fill out a survey. But the number was relatively small compared to the number of people they tried to reach. And it was still statistically significant in the sense that it met research criteria for how many responses you need out of your universe you're trying to reach. But it was disappointing that we didn't have more people involved. And I think I personally understand somewhat why that happened. When they were having the public meetings, I asked several people I encountered, African American people, did they receive a notice in the mail that they were supposed to get about these meetings, and that they could sign up. And most of them said no. Well, they probably got it, but they didn't know what it was, and probably just
Correct.
thought it was junk mail and threw it away.
Correct.
So, I'm not sure what else they could have done, because they also had TV ads about this. But it's a symptom that we as a community are not as politically aware of what's going on with government, and that's something that we need to work on, and it's just not only not aware, but a lot of people just are not knowledgeable about the whole process, you know.
Correct.
And especially our young people. I gave a presentation to the Golden Pole youth, actually 2 presentations, and there were things they didn't know. And one of the presentations was on the Electoral College, and even some of the adults in attendance didn't know anything about the Electoral College. And without going into detail, ultimately, when you vote for a president, a vice president, and so forth, at the federal level, you're whoever wins doesn't win because of your vote. It wins because of the number of electors who were committed to that candidate, and people don't quite understand that if they're not involved at the state level, which determines who the electors are, then at the federal level they can lose out.
Correct.
So we just have to be more educated about the whole process and more involved.
Absolutely. And I think the 10-1 will help us become more engaged simply because the district composition is smaller, which allows us to be able to get closer to the residents and the constituent base and the citizenry. And those of us who are actively involved in various groups, we now have more of an opportunity to engage the community more. What you were saying with regards to the findings, for those of you who are not from Virginia Beach was sued because of their Voting Rights Act violations. They violated the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and so they were sued. And the judge ruled in the favor of the plaintiffs. That means they ruled against the city and told the city that they would have to change their election process in order for them to meet the voting rights, meet the obligations of the Voting Rights Act. Okay. Once that occurred, the city was not happy that the judge ruled against them, and so they decided on what Fred is talking about, which is a going out to the community, asking the community questions, asking the community to give their feedback. Well, actually, they didn't ask the community questions. They put us in a forum where we were able to share with the city how we felt about the election that was done in a 10-1 process. Because up until that period of time, we had what we called a hybrid system, which was a 7-3-1, where 7 people had to live in districts. 3 people on city council had to run, could live anywhere in the city that they wanted to. And then, of course, the mayor could live anywhere in the city that they wanted, that he or she wants to. So, so you had four members of council who could live anywhere in the city, and they would have to receive votes from all over the city. You had 7 members that had to live in a district, and they too had to receive votes from all over the entire city. When we changed it to 10-1, every district could select the person of their choice from their district directly. So they didn't have to worry about somebody from another district voting for the candidate that was coming out of their district, because we had a number of candidates who lived in the district but could never get the number of votes that they needed to win within their district. In order for them to win, they got votes from the rest of the city. Well, that meant for those people in that particular district, they didn't elect the candidate of their choice. The rest of the city elected a candidate for them. And so that's why that election was so important. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about the findings of UVA Weldon Cooper Center for Public Policy. When they reviewed all of the data and assessed all of the data, what they discovered is that the majority of the people, regardless of demographics, regardless of age, regardless of their financial well-being, all over the city, whether they were located in District 1 or District 10, all over the entire city, they found that the majority of the people, regardless of district, regardless of race, regardless of gender, still supported the 10-1 district system, district voting system, which said that that the ruling of the court was the right ruling for the city of Virginia Beach. Do you have anything else to add to that, Fred?
No, I mean, it's not surprising. It is not the result that the so-called powers, political powers that be, that really wanted to retain the old system. It's not the result they wanted, but it's the right result for good government for us, and especially for Black and brown people who have a better chance now of getting people who identify with their issues elected to school board and city council. And it allows for some good people who otherwise could not afford to run to be able to run now, because they only have to spend money and time and energy within their respective district.
That is so correct, because I think we're up to 109 precincts now. We were at one point in time, we were at 90 some precincts. Then we went to 100, and now I believe they added somewhere around 9 or 10 additional precincts. So can you imagine running for a local office such as school board or city council and having to run in the whole entire city? The amount of time it would take to meet a city of residents of over 460,000 persons versus a district size of around 48,000 people, but a voting age population somewhere around 36,000 people. So that's a huge difference in terms of running for office, making contact to people, and making sure that you have a real opportunity to get elected to office. And that's what we saw. We saw that it was more difficult if you weren't a part of the in crowd, and you shouldn't have to be a part of the in crowd in order to run to serve your city. You should be able to serve your city because you have a passion to serve and work on behalf of the citizenry. And we were finding that a lot of people wanted to run for office, but it was just virtually impossible to do so because of the cost. It was basically cost prohibitive, and it was time prohibitive, and the city was just way too large to try to cover this much land. I think it was something like 198 miles of land of this city. And if you do any driving, 200 miles of driving is somewhere around, depending upon traffic, is about 4 hours to go about 200 miles. So it would be quite a distance for you to try to get through the whole city. And even if you broke it up into days and time slots, you're still talking about a tremendous amount of time to get around the whole city of Virginia Beach.
So I want to talk for a minute about our responsibility as citizens. Under the new system, it's supposed to make the elected official more responsive to the needs of the people within their district. But we're all human beings. And, you know, the old saying, a squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, if we don't squeak, we can't expect our elected official within our district to give us a lot of oil. So we need to make them accountable by engaging with them. You should know who your elected official is within your district, and you should know how to communicate with them. And you should take advantage of that opportunity to communicate with them. And on the other hand, we should demand that our district officials hold town meetings within their district, and not just around election time, to sort of give us a debriefing on what's going on, and especially issues that will be coming up in the future, so that they can hear directly from the electorate our opinion about things. So we need to make them accountable, and they need to engage with us.
Excellent point. And the other thing, because a lot of people say, well, when you have districts, that means you can only contact your council member. That is not true. While we do have districts, all council members, all elected officials are responsible for the entire city, whether that is a school board member or a city council member. And so we need to understand that they work for us. We do not work for them. And I think that has been another breakdown in terms of knowledge and communication with regards to where we are as citizens. As citizens, we almost feel like we must ask permission. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to city council meetings and heard the public go up front and say, "Thank you for having me." What do you mean thanking city council and the mayor? We want to thank you for having me. Wait a minute. The city belongs to all of us. They're sitting in a position, they are serving in a position, but at the end of the day, they work for the citizenry. And I think that is one of the things that we need to continue to drill in the minds of our community. As you said, get engaged, become actively involved, ask questions. That's what they're there for. Ask for town hall meetings. And when you ask for them, attend the town hall meetings. When they are sending you information, do not ignore it. A lot of those pieces of mail and materials that you receive, there's a time limit on those things. And so you need to act on it promptly so that your voice can be heard. If they send you a notice about something that's going on or some changes that are about to be made, you need to respond back and give your opinion with regards to that. Well, it looks like we're coming up on the close of this show. I hope this was helpful to people who are in our city, but also people who are other places, because we definitely want you to become more actively involved. Fred, before we go, I always like to give my guests a chance to, do a 90-second closing.
Well, that catches me a little bit off guard. Again, I apologize.
You don't have to do 90 seconds if you don't want to. You can do less.
Okay. I apologize again for my camera not working. but I can see you, and as always, you look great. And, and I've enjoyed interacting with you. I hope the audience, as you said, got something worthwhile out of it. Bottom line is we have to uh, get ourselves educated about the political process at every level. We've got to help our youth to be educated, because I'm not even sure anymore, Georgia, and whether school systems uh, have civic or government studies anymore. So we've got to make sure that our youth and our adults understand the process. And once we understand the process, we've got to be actively engaged and not just at voting time, although that's critical that we vote, and we vote wisely by understanding the issues and by following the candidates, especially ones that are running for reelection, because now they have a track record. And if we're not looking at what they have done, then it's going to be difficult for us to properly assess what they will do. Um, we are in a dangerous period in American history right now. Um, it's uh, it's been described as Reconstruction uh, Part Two. You recall Reconstruction was a period after the Civil War where um, slaves were supposed to be free and equal and able to vote and able to own property and to go to court and so forth. Um, and that got slowly eroded and overturned. Well, that's happening now. You know, our voting rights that we got passed with the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Rights Act. Um, you know, they are actively trying to suppress that with various means, and if we're not knowledgeable and aware and involved, then we're going to end up back where we were in the 50s and 60s. So get involved.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. And we definitely want to stay on point. Again, a lot of changes are happening and they're happening fast. And we want to make sure that our people are knowledgeable, that they're engaged, and that they're participating. You know, we don't want you to just be engaged by listening. We want you to be engaged by actively getting involved. With that being said, we want to again thank our guest today, Mr. Frederick C. Ford. And next week we'll be here again. Please share this with others, and excited about talking with you each week at GA for Justice. I am Georgia Allen. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a good afternoon.
Once again, you've been listening and watching GA for Justice with our special guest. And join her next week, 12 to 1, same time, right here on WBDM Radio and Bond Digital Media Network. Until next week, bye-bye.